your neighbor's advice about in-state schools, it could be costing your kid their dream college. If you're planning your child's college list based on what worked 10 years ago or what other parents in the neighborhood are saying, you need to see the actual admissions data, because 3 of most common assumptions parents make are not just wrong, they're actively hurting your students' chances and potentially costing you tens of thousands of dollars. Look, I get it. You are trying to do everything right. You're listening to friends. You're scrolling through forums. You're asking older siblings' parents what worked for them. And a lot of that advice sounds reasonable. Of course, in-state should help. Of course, $90,000 schools are not realistic. Of course, your strong student will get merit money. But here's the problem. The admissions landscape has shifted dramatically in the last decade, especially in the Northeast. The families who are getting the best outcomes are the ones getting their kids into schools they love and that they can actually afford, are the ones who stopped trusting the conventional wisdom and started looking at what the data actually shows. I have spent the last year analyzing financial aid packages, acceptance rates, and enrollment data from over 50 colleges in the Northeast. And what I found challenges almost everything parents think they know about college planning. I am going to show you 3 statistics that will completely change how you approach your college list. And I promise, at least one of these is going to make you want to screenshot this video and send it to every parent group chat you're in. Let's start with the biggest myth, that in-state students always have the edge at public universities. Your kid just got rejected from UMass. Meanwhile, a student from Ohio with the same GPA got in. Here's what happened. Most families assume that in-state applications are always favored at public universities. In some states, that's absolutely true. For example, Virginia still protects the vast majority of seats at UVA for Virginia residents. North Carolina does the same thing at UNC Chapel Hill. But in much of the Northeast, the picture is far more complicated. According to enrollment data published by the Common Dataset Initiative, which tracks admission statistics across all major universities, many of the Northeast public flagships now admit out-of-state students higher rates than in-state applicants. For example, UMass Amherst, University of Vermont, University of Connecticut, out-of-state students are often admitted at higher rates than in-state students. Why? Because non-resident tuition plays a major role in these schools' budgets. On average, an out-of-state student at UConn pays roughly $43,000 per year versus $18,000 for an in-state. That's a $25,000 difference per student multiplied across thousands of seats. Admitting academically strong out-of-state student helps stabilize funding and allows the university to invest in programs, faculty, and facilities. So when the budget office is looking at enrollment targets, they're not just looking and thinking about how many students to admit. They're thinking about how many full tuition paying students they need to keep the lights on. And here's what most families don't realize. This dynamic isn't limited only to public universities. At private institutions like Boston University, Northeastern, and NYU, geographic diversity is also a priority. These schools often admit a high percentage of students from outside of their home state to avoid an overly regional class. BU doesn't want a freshman class that's 60% from Massachusetts. They want students from California. They want students from Texas, from Florida. They want international students because that's what creates the kind of campus environment that attracts top faculty and maintains their national reputation, which means that being from Massachusetts can actually hurt your odds at BU because they're actively trying to balance their class geographically. I had a family in my practice from Massachusetts last year where mom kept telling her daughter, don't bother applying to UVM. It's too hard to get in as an out-of-stater. Well, Turns out Vermont residents had a 67% acceptance rate that year, while out-of-state students had a 72% acceptance rate. She was literally avoiding schools where her daughter had a better percent chance of admission. Here's what it means for your family. Stop assuming certain odds of admission based on your geography. Depending on the school, being out of state may actually help your student, especially when they're academically competitive. If your student is looking at Northeast Publics, their stats are solid, and you need to understand that being an in-state may be neutral or even a disadvantage, depending on the school's revenue model and diversity goals. Do not cross schools off your list because you assume you're on the wrong side of the state line. Look at the actual data for each school. Because the families who understand this are building college lists that other parents never even consider, and they're getting better results because of it. Now let's talk about the second stat, and this one stops parents in their tracks every single time. That $92,000 school that you rolled out, it actually might cost your family less than the $35,000 state school. Here's the math that no one explains. Few things stop parents in their tracks faster than a tuition number approaching or exceeding $90,000. The instinct is understandable. That's not realistic for us. I hear that all the time. But the sticker price and the actual cost are two very different things. And according to the data from National Center for Education Statistics, private colleges with the highest sticker prices are often the ones with the largest endowments and therefore have the most generous financial aid budgets. Schools like Williams College, Amherst College, Bowdoin College, these schools meet 100% of demonstrated financial need. And they also do that without loans. So for families who qualify, the net cost is often far lower than expected, and sometimes even lower, less expensive than looking at most other schools. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but let me show you how this actually plays out. Now, compare that with the public option like Bridgewater University or Westfield State. While the tuition is lower on paper, say $35,000 all in, these schools may cover only a part of demonstrated need. That means the families are left responsible for the gap, which could be $10,000 or $15,000 or more per year. And suddenly that cheaper school isn't that cheaper at all. Then there are those institutions that rely heavily on merit aid instead of need-based aid. Schools like Syracuse University, University of New Haven, or Clark University. They frequently offer substantial merit scholarships to strong students. Yes, that happens all the time, but those awards are heavily based on academic profile and on competitiveness. If your student is in the top 25% of the applicants, they might get the $20,000 or the $30,000 per year scholarship. If they're in the middle of the applicant pool, they may get nothing. So you've got three completely different financial aid models operating simultaneously, and the most families are only thinking about one of them. I worked with a family last year whose daughter got into both Amherst College, where sticker price is around $85,000, and UMass Amherst, where the sticker price was around $33,000. After financial aid, Amherst cost them $18,000 per year. UMass, after partial aid, cost them $22,000 per year. The most expensive school was $4,000 cheaper annually, so that's around $16,000 difference over 4 years. And here is what made it even more dramatic. The Amherst package was entirely of grants, no loans. The UMass package included $5,500 in loans per year, which would have to be added another $2,200 in debt by graduation. So the family didn't just save money by choosing Amherst, they avoided debt entirely. But if they had ruled out Amherst based on the sticker price, they never would have known that option existed. The takeaway here is simple but critical. Never rule out a school based on the sticker price alone. Some of the most expensive colleges end up being the most affordable ones because financial aid is calculated differently. Run the net price calculator on every school's website before you make assumptions. And if you're not sure how to interpret these numbers, or if you're seeing wildly different results across schools and you don't know why, that's exactly where strategic planning comes in. Because families who understand how these different aid models work are the ones who end up with options. The families who rule out schools too early are the ones that end up getting stuck choosing between schools that they can barely afford. Here's a third stat, and this one that gets most pushback because it contradicts what parents desperately want to believe. You may think that applying early decision will get your kid in and get you merit money. I'm about to show you why that almost never happens and why schools designed it that way. This one is one of the hardest truths for families to accept. Many families hope that their student can apply early decision, increase their odds of admission, and receive generous merit scholarship. In reality, unfortunately, those outcomes almost never align. Research from National Association for College Admission Counseling shows that early decision programs were originally created to help colleges lock in their incoming class early to reduce their acceptance rates, which, you guessed it, boosts rankings. Schools that rely heavily on ED tend to focus their financial aid on need-based support, not merit scholarships, because they don't need to use merit money to attract students who are already committed. Now, think about it from the school's perspective. If you already signed a binding agreement saying that you will attend if accepted, why would they offer you merit money? They already got you. Merit aid is a recruitment tool. It's designed to convince strong students to choose their school over a competitor. If there's no competitor in the picture because you're already bound to attend, the incentive disappears. At schools that rely heavily on early decision, such as Williams, Amherst, Tufts, Boston College, merit aid is minimal or non-existent. These institutions use ED to lock in their class and focus their financial aid almost entirely on need-based support. If you don't qualify for need-based aid, you're paying close to full price, period. On the other hand, schools that award significant merit scholarships like Syracuse, University of Miami, Drexel University, those schools tend to admit more students through regular decision and early action, not binding early decision. Why? Because merit aid is how they compete for students who are also looking at higher ranked schools. If you apply regular decision to Syracuse and you're a strong student, they might offer you a $25,000 per year in merit aid because they know you're probably also considering Boston University, Northeastern, other schools like that, and they want to make you a competitive offer. But if you apply early decision to Syracuse, they have zero reason to make you that same offer. You already committed. A few schools do offer ED and merit, but families should approach these cases with realistic expectation. The overlap is very small, and the awards often are more modest than what you would get if you're applying regular decision, and having leverage to compare offers disappears. So here's a decision every family has to make. Early decision usually means giving up merit money. Families must choose which strategy matters more, maximizing admission odds or preserving financial flexibility. I had a family applying ED to a top 30 university last year because they had heard it would double their daughter's chances. She got in, they were thrilled. Then the financial aid package comes back, and it was almost entirely made of loans because they didn't qualify much for need-based financial aid and the school doesn't give merit. I warned them. We did go over these options, but they wanted to do what they wanted to do. So they tried to negotiate. But, as you could imagine, the school basically said, you've already committed, this package is what it is, and they ended up withdrawing for financial reasons, which, by the way, is the only way you can break the ED contract. And they started reapplying regular decisions elsewhere. But they lost 3 months of strategic planning time, 3 months where they could have been identifying schools that would have offered their daughter real merit money, building relationships with admissions offices. Instead, they were stuck scrambling in February trying to salvage their situation. Bottom line, if your student is competitive for merit aid and you need that money to make college affordable, early decision is almost always the wrong move. If you're willing to pay close to full price at an elite school and your student is genuinely has their heart set on that specific school, ED might make sense, but go with it with your eyes wide open. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to do ED admission to boost your chances and get the merit scholarships. The schools that offer one rarely offer the other. And when they do, the merit is usually much smaller than what you'd get through regular decision. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, I had an idea about any of this and how do I actually figure out the right strategy for my kid? That's exactly the question I help families answer every single day. Because here's the thing, these 3 stats are just the beginning. The families who get the best outcomes aren't just avoiding common myths. They're building their entire college list around financial aid strategy, around geographic positioning, and realistic merit scholarship targets. They're doing it before junior year starts, not after applications are already submitted. If you want help creating that kind of strategic plan for your student, I'll put a link in the description to schedule a free planning call. We'll look at your student's profile, talk through your financial situation, and map out exactly which schools make sense and which strategies will actually work for your family. So let's recap what we just covered. Please remember these 3 things. 1, out-of-state students sometimes have the edge, especially at Northeast public flagships that rely on non-resident tuition revenue. Geography isn't always an advantage. 2, the highest sticker prices often come with the best aid. Ruling out schools based on tuition alone means you might be eliminating the most affordable options for your family. 3, early decision and merit aid almost never go together. If you need merit money, early decision usually is the wrong strategy, no matter how much you want the admissions boost. College admissions myths are powerful because they sound logical. Of course, in-state should help. Of course, cheaper schools should cost less. Of course, strong students should get merit everywhere they apply. But the data tells a different story. You don't need to memorize every statistic, but understanding these patterns can completely change how you approach college planning. The families who challenge assumptions, ask better questions, and stay open-minded are far better positions not just to get in, but to afford schools where their students can truly thrive. Now that you understand why the most common college admissions advice is wrong, you need to know how to build a list that reflects the actual admissions data. So keep watching my videos, subscribe to my channel, follow me on social media, and attend my live webinars to stay informed. See you soon.